Hi, and welcome to Hardin County Educational TV, Issues and Insights. I'm Sarah Vaughn with the City of E-Town, and I have the honor today to talk to Mr. Murray Wanner. He is with the City of Radcliff. Murray, thank you so much for coming out. And so we're going to talk about some things today and just kind of maybe educate some folks on the processes and things that your office deals with. So let everybody know who you're with, or where you're with, rather, at the City of Radcliff.
Okay, I'm actually the planning official for the City of Radcliff.
Okay.
And I work in the Economic Development, Planning, and Building Department.
Okay.
And we've got a staff that handles permits, and that's kind of what we're going to focus on discussing today.
Okay.
The permit process and all the different permits that we do require.
Okay.
So we kind of wanted to talk about it for the fact of just educating people,
right,
letting them know what they might be required in terms of permits. A lot of people might not know that there's permits required for certain types of work done in the city.
I'm sure. And that is an important point, because I know working for the City of E-Town, that's always the question of county versus city. And your focus is 100% on within the city limits, whether
Yes.
it be residential, commercial, property, doesn't matter, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And I know, I'm sure you run into that daily, and you pull up an address and go, well, you're not within the city, so you need to call the county and all of that, and I'm sure that will always continue.
That almost happens daily.
I bet it does.
Yes.
in your office. So you've got several staff members here that help you along with all of these different permits and processes and inspections. So talk about each one of them and different things that they do within your department.
Okay, so as you know, I'm the planning official. And then we also have Jeremy Murrow. He's our building official.
Okay.
And he oversees the building inspections program.
Okay.
And also plan review of architectural plans for construction.
Perfect. So if I wanted to build a building or build a house or just a building, the commercial world?
Any of
the above.
Any construction related to building structures.
Okay.
What would fall under the Kentucky Building Code.
Perfect.
So Jeremy oversees that aspect of the department as the building official, and then below him, Danny Richardson works, and he's our building inspector.
Okay.
And he goes out on site, performs inspections as needed. Mm-hmm. People will call and schedule with him to come out and inspect their construction
right,
through the whole process.
Okay.
So he might go out and inspect footer foundation to start. Then he might inspect the framing. Mm-hmm. He gets into inspection of the trusses, the roof, everything else. So just kind of works from the ground up.
Keeping everyone safe.
Yes, exactly. And then we also have on staff Denise Haynes.
Okay.
She's our administrative assistant.
Okay.
And she also performs duties as a permits clerk as well.
Wow.
So
okay.
Yeah, she works in a lot of different capacities. She helps with setting up planning commission meetings, mm-hmm. board of adjustment meetings. She works with the code enforcement board. Mm-hmm. So she works pretty extensively with getting our meetings set up, our agendas, that type of thing.
Right.
As well, she does work on taking permits too and entering permit data.
Okay. And
then we also have Brittany Keller. She's our permits clerk. Mm-hmm. And she's the first face you see at City Hall. Okay. She greets people. Mm-hmm. She takes phone calls, directs them, but she also enters permits into our system. We work with a program software called iWorks, and we enter all our permits electronically into that system.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
To keep them all organized.
Yes. So we can pull those up by property valuation, PVA number.
Sure.
We can pull them up by address. We put in the contractor's name. We put in the property owner's name. So there's a lot of different ways we can pull that information.
Okay. And that's permits of all types that they're working with. Yes.
And I could get into that if you want to discuss the different types of permits.
Yeah, there you go. Good lead in right there.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we do have a wide variety of permits that we handle. Building permit applications would be one. Mm-hmm. Another one would be fence permit applications, driveway permit applications, encroachment permit applications, sign permit applications, tent permit applications, business license applications, and home occupation permit applications. Now, on one note, I want to say that business license applications are actually handled through our finance department, but we also do sign off on a component of those.
Because they overlap.
Yes.
Right.
What happens?
If a new business comes in, you all need to know in the planning, and they need to know in finance. Right.
Well, what happens is, say for example, someone files for a building permit. Well, their contractors have to have a business license to conduct business activity operations in the city.
Exactly. Right.
Another example might be someone buys a carport, and in some cases they might contact a company that's not even in the state of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. We had one a little while ago where they were out of northern Ohio, mm-hmm. the company that manufactured the carports. That individual still has to have a business license in the city because they're conducting business. Right. So that's really important, I think, for homeowners to realize, because sometimes the contractors will just come in and try to perform the services without the license, and then if we're able to catch it while they're doing it, if they don't have a building permit, usually they do, and that's when we catch it. But sometimes they might come in, may not be aware of our requirements, and at that time we want to make sure they also have a business license. And
the entire purpose is to keep people safe at the end of the day, is to make sure they're reputable companies, is to make sure that they have insurance, is to make sure, of all of those things, because I know, I hear that a lot too, even in what I do is nothing to do with what your job is, but even just working as a city employee, why do we have to jump through so many hoops? And they're created to keep us safe, to make sure that the building you're standing in has been inspected and everyone has signed off on it for a purpose. So it's very important.
We had one recently, a good example, where an individual had someone from out of state install a carport, and they put it in front of their existing garage in their driveway, which made sense, so they wouldn't have to pave a new area to put the carport. Okay. But we have building setbacks. Buildings, structures have to be so far off property lines, especially the front property line. So you want buildings in a line, for uniformity, versus things projecting out. So in this case, they put a carport in front of their house, and it sticks way out closer to the street and the sidewalk. Right. They didn't know. They hired a company from out of state who came in, didn't obtain a permit, didn't have a license. It was reported. Once we investigated it, we found out, we notified the homeowner. Of course, they were in a bind at that time because they had hired this company they thought knew what they were doing. Right. So they went through the process of filing for an application for a permit. We told them that the contractor was supposed to have a business license. Right. We tried to find an alternative location, and in some cases you can do a variance application, and in a roundabout way, we tried everything we could to find an alternate location for that, and we could not. Oh. So eventually they had to contact the company back. Right. They were bearing some responsibility too. Of course. A significant portion of it. Right. Because they did not have the license. They came and did work in the city. So as you can see in a real life situation, again, like you said, it's there to protect the property owners, because if everybody has to build in a similar fashion, a straight line across the street, you have something that looks out of character sticking out, then someone calls about it, says, hey, is that permissible? Well, then also we're protecting the homeowner, because you don't want to see them retroactively have to go back and call the contractor or have to tear it down. Yes. Or have to lose money. Tear it down, sell it. Right. Resell it for maybe a lower value than they originally bought it. Exactly. And at the end of the day, one of the biggest goals in a planning department is that uniformity, because we want our cities to be aesthetically pleasing. Yeah. Right? We want to see that, and that's why the folks that live within the city and the folks that pay the business tax and all of those things, that's why they pay those extra taxes, in order to keep those things the way we want them. Otherwise, you should move outside of the city limits, right? And that's in any town. Well, you want a cohesive neighborhood. Exactly. And you want your property value protected.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's something that gets lost, and people just go, oh, there's just fiery hoops, and there's all these rules that they put on us. And they're not wrong, but they're good reasons and good purposes. And if you pull those things away, it affects every single one that owns property within the city. So the work that you do and your department does is just extremely important. And so I think that it's good for folks to know that and to realize that. And the other thing too, I would think, is that a lot of these businesses, this isn't new news, that they need to contact the local governments.
It's not.
And so many of them just don't.
Most of the local people that we deal with
Sure.
do know. They know very well. They practice good business practices.
Right.
They have their licenses up to date, and they get all the permits that are required in advance of doing any work. It's generally, we'll get the odd one out of town, maybe out of the county,
Sure.
out of the state,
Right.
that isn't quite so knowledgeable, I'd say.
Right. Or wants to fly under the radar.
Yeah.
Not on purpose.
Yeah.
So, and then too, I know, a lot of the rules and regulations that you work behind and work for are state enforced. So
Yes.
talk a little bit about that as well, because a lot of folks, I know tent permitting is a great one. A lot of those are not local governments that are creating those ordinances or creating those laws. They're actually done by federal and state guidelines, and it's your department's job to uphold those. So talk a little bit about the interaction with the state, the code enforcement, things like that.
Okay. Well, like for example, building permits, they fall under the Kentucky Building Code. So
the entire Kentucky Building Code,
yes.
Not just Murray's.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. It's not a local code, it's a state code.
Right.
So that's a great example. As far as those permits go, you might kind of wonder when they would be required, I guess. For example, a building permit would be required when a new building is constructed.
Okay.
Or if there's an addition, alteration, remodel, or a deck.
Okay.
Alterations and remodels, for example, those would be required if it's a structural improvement.
Okay.
Cosmetic improvements do not require it. So if you're performing an alteration or remodel to your home, if you're adding walls, taking walls out, load-bearing components to the home that are a life and safety issue, those typically require a building permit.
Okay.
Cosmetic, say you're putting up some new drywall or, painting, those kinds of things don't require a permit.
Okay.
Also, with accessory structures, for example, which also fall under the Kentucky Building Code, if they're 200 square feet and greater, they do require a building permit.
Okay.
And do you know what an accessory structure would be?
I don't.
Okay.
I was hoping that would come out. I didn't have to ask.
Yeah. So an accessory structure is accessory to a principal structure. A principal structure is your main structure on the property, like a home. An accessory structure would be, for example, a detached garage,
Oh, okay.
a carport,
Okay.
a shed, utility building, something along those lines.
Okay.
So if they're 200 square feet and greater, those do require a permit.
But under 2, they do not.
Exactly.
Would a deck fall under that as well?
Deck falls under additions, alterations, and remodels.
Okay.
Because
You said that earlier. I apologize.
yeah, usually those are attached to the structure. So at that point, it's kind of like an addition.
Yeah, for sure.
Other things that would require, and that would fall under the Kentucky Building Code, under building permits. Now, fence permits, we also have those as well. And people might ask, well, do I need a fence permit to put up a fence? The answer is yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yes,
Okay.
for new fences and replacement of existing fences as well.
Okay.
And the reason why, now that's a local permit. The biggest reason why there is to ensure that it meets the fence regulations in the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So, give you a good example. I want to put up a 6-foot wooden privacy fence. Well, they might think, I want to put the nice side inside facing me. Can't do it. The local requirement is the structural side has to face inwards. So we had a while back a case where somebody hired someone there was actually a certified installer with a local big box store. And they actually requested that they put the structural side out and what they called the nice side in.
Okay.
Well, the neighbor called and said, hey, did they get a permit?
Yeah, I don't want to look at this.
Were they allowed to do this? So they actually had to go back and fix it.
Gosh.
And in that case, they didn't take out all the pickets. They ended up shadow boxing it in. But what ended up happening is it cost somebody a lot more money because they didn't do it the right way, and they had to use double the pickets.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was a pretty good size fence.
Double the price.
Yeah. But again, you know, a lot of these are enforced also. We try to find what we can, but a lot of times neighbors will call these violations.
Oh, sure. Right. Yeah. Because it affects their property value, and if they want to sell, right, I completely understand.
So another thing that we require permits for are driveways, driveway permits, and that would be for any new driveway or the replacement of an existing driveway or the enlargement of an existing driveway. Now, new driveway, we do that to kind of look at access points on a road. Also spacing between driveways so that they have to meet certain standards, that they're not too close together. If you have more than one on a property, 30-foot spacing, adjoining properties, 10-foot minimum. As far as replacement of an existing driveway, we do require that driveways are paved, and not everyone knows that. So if you have a subdivision with certain houses of a certain value, someone says, I want to put in a gravel driveway, everyone else has concrete driveways. Well, you can't do that, and we go through the process of a driveway apron permit. Also, with the driveway permit, if it's a ditch line system, we may require a pipe under it for the storm water to flow through.
So you don't flood your yard.
Exactly.
In your house.
Yeah. So people kind of wonder, why would I need a permit for replacing an existing driveway? That's a good reason why.
Sure.
Or enlarging it. There's certain requirements as far as minimum width and maximum width of driveways. So we look at all those different variables with driveway permits. Encroachment permits, we also have those. And what those are is when someone encroaches within the public right-of-way.
Okay.
And the public right-of-way is not just the roadway, the paved area, but it encompasses the ditches, the curb and gutter, sometimes sidewalks. And a lot of times with encroachment permits, the reason we have those is for utility work.
Okay.
A lot of times like utility lines being installed, boxes for say like fiber optic cable, internet service.
Is all right there basically within that ditch area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they'll come within our right-of-way, which once we accept the road, we also take acceptance of the right-of-way.
Sure.
So if someone builds within our right-of-way, we want to make sure that we have a place to review it, a point of contact for who did the scope of work, because if we ever have to say widen a road later, we want to make sure that we've looked at these things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Another type of permit we deal with are sign permits.
Now, here's a topic.
Yes, it is. So with signs, we require permits for new signs and also for replacement of an existing sign.
And we have general election coming up. So even the little rinky-dink signs, the temporary signs.
Yes, we look at all different types of signs, temporary, permanent. Obviously, for new businesses, that's a big one that we run into a lot with signs.
Oh, yeah.
Also, another type of permit are tent permits.
Yes.
And our tent permits are pretty much for installation of tents, generally associated with fireworks sales.
Right.
That's seasonal.
Events.
Yeah. Seasonal type things.
But only larger than a 20 by 20, is that correct? It used to be that way.
We do it for all tents.
All tents?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what usually happens with those tent permits is, like you had said, the state fire marshal may have to issue a certificate. They've reviewed it in terms of fireworks. But that's usually where we stick with tent permits.
Oh, okay.
Mainly for fireworks sales.
Okay.
We also do home occupation permit review, and those are for new home-based businesses such as home offices, salons, and other service-based businesses.
Have you seen an influx in those with COVID and The shutting down and the closing of a lot of things?
People like to start with a home-based business a lot of times because less overhead, so they can start small. And we love to see that because then they can branch out to a storefront location later once their business grows. So they could start with, you know, a small salon at their home, one chair, and they can perform services.
Grow out of it.
Now, of course, that was something with that, you know, was also enforced during COVID that
you couldn't even go to a salon, so
they were keeping a close eye on that. So we did see an influx of permits, but there were some things that obviously couldn't be done.
Right. Maybe you saw permits later.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, we talked about business licenses, signing off on a component of those, making sure contractors have them with building projects.
Okay. So what are some of the costs associated and fees that are associated with these permits? And I'm sure that they change no matter, you know, depending upon what type of permit, but how do the fees work, let's say, for a building permit?
Okay, so building permits, there's a schedule, a fee schedule set up by the Kentucky Building Code, and it's based on tiers of cost of construction.
Okay.
So if your cost of construction is below $3,999, $1 less than $4,000, zero cost.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if you're just doing a small utility building, if you will, or something like that. Okay.
Yeah, so it's more of a review process.
Okay.
And that's what I wish more people knew, because they think, oh no, it's going to be cost prohibitive. Let me just go put this small building up, and it'll be up today, and not think about getting a permit. Well, it's not even a cost associated with a lot of these.
Right.
And we can catch so many potential issues, like
for free to the homeowner.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, for example, Kentucky 811, digging. We want to make sure that they call before any kind of excavation occurs for foundations. It's a life safety issue. So, even things like that, just coordinating with different offices to make sure that people's safety is in mind.
Exactly.
And it goes up in, like $25 increments.
Okay.
For like every $5,000 up to $89,999.
Okay.
So,
if I'm building like a big box store, would be a different.
Yeah, you'd be getting into a little bit more cost, but it's still not near as much as people would think.
Or near as much as it would cost if you don't. Take the proper channels.
There can be some big costs.
It's definitely not a ask for permission or ask for forgiveness later situation.
No, if you excavate and hit an underground electric line, it could be really bad.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Also, in terms of fence permits, driveway permits, encroachment permits, and home occupation permits, we don't have any cost associated with it.
Okay.
There is no cost.
That's great to the homeowner.
Yeah, it's helpful, I think.
It's extremely helpful.
Yeah. Sign permits, $25 for the first sign, $5 for each additional.
Okay.
Temporary signs, $5. Tent permits are $125. And then business licenses are $25 to obtain the permit. And then at the end of the year, there's a formula based off gross receipts, based off the type of business that the finance office calculates, and they handle all that.
Okay.
So that's pretty much our basic fee schedule associated with the permits.
Okay. So especially to the average homeowner, if you will, the blue collar worker, we're not out to get you.
Yeah.
Which is an important note, I think.
It's not cost prohibitive.
No.
I think that our local officials have done a tremendous job of keeping things with people in mind.
Exactly.
Especially the homeowner.
Exactly.
Your private property owner, just kind of keeping things reasonable so that it's not cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we want to keep people safe and make sure the construction happens in an orderly fashion.
Right. And that we're not getting your construction, companies or vendors that shouldn't be in business or shouldn't be doing some of the work, making sure that they're crossing their T's as well, which is being a responsible homeowner, business owner.
We don't want somebody out there digging and then OSHA, Occupational Health and Safety, is called, and they come out and find out the person didn't even get a permit, didn't call 811, or or worst case scenario, some kind of accident happens.
Exactly.
You know, you don't want to hit a gas line or something.
Exactly. And I always like to say there's the warning tag on different things because something happened to make the warning tag there.
Yeah.
So don't be one to help create the warning tag.
Yeah, because the greatest cost is if someone was to lose their life.
Exactly.
But also, you know, financial costs, you know, that if someone does work that is not authorized, then
right.
they could be responsible for a tremendous amount of cost and damages.
Most definitely. Most
Yeah.
definitely. So we're going to wrap up here, Murray, but what is, you know, probably the biggest phone call or the biggest question, something that you just really want to relay, you know, to the folks that might be watching right now? What's important for them to understand maybe about you or about the department as a whole?
Well, I would say the biggest thing is we do keep costs in mind, so our costs are not exorbitant. They are reasonable. So please call us if in doubt. Call to ask if you need a permit, because we'd be glad to guide you in the right direction. We'd much rather have that happen than someone go out and do work that
Sure.
could cause a potential problem later and a greater cost.
There are no dumb questions.
Exactly.
Most definitely. Well, you know, as a fellow government employee, I appreciate the work that you all do, because I think a lot of what planning departments do just completely goes unnoticed to some degree, because everything you do is behind the scenes and it's in prep work and it's all of those things. So thank you for the work that you all do every single day to your entire department. I know that sometimes it's not an easy job for sure, and that's just me tipping the iceberg on knowing what you guys do. But thank you so much. Thank you to your whole department.
Thank you.
And if folks would like to get some more information, or they're like, you know what, I have been thinking about building that garage, or maybe I want to dig for a pool, or whatever it might be, what's a good way to reach you and your team?
Well, they could call us at 270-351-1875.
Okay.
Or they can even send an email to Denise Haynes at radcliffeplanning@gmail.com.
Okay, perfect. And the website, if they wanted to just kind of peruse through and check
we have
everything
all
out.
our regulations at www.radcliffe.org.
.radcliffe.org. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again. Thank you for watching and tuning in today to Mr. Murray Wanner, so with the Planning and Development Office with the City of Radcliffe. If you have any questions, make sure you check out with his team. Thank you.